The neon lights of the Bellagio cast shadows across her trembling hands. $1 billion. Gone, her family's legacy, reduced to nothing more than a memory and a crushing debt that could destroy 3 generations. But Sarah Martinez wasn't just any girl. She was the daughter who remembered every lesson her grandfather whispered about numbers, about patience, about seeing what others couldn't see. While her father's empire crumbled around million-dollar poker tables, she found something more powerful than luck in the most unlikely place: a janitor's cart, a worn blackjack strategy card, and a secret that would transform the biggest loss in casino history into the greatest comeback story ever told. This is the story of how one girl turned a billion-dollar disaster into her family's salvation. How she learned that sometimes the person with the least to lose has the most to gain. How trust, patience, and an unexpected mentor can change everything. The girl who lost everything was about to discover that in the world of high-stakes gambling, the biggest risk isn't betting at all. It's giving up before you understand the real game being played. Some stories begin with winning. This one begins with losing everything and finding something worth far more than money. Full script, 1-hour narration. The crystal chandelier above table 17 cast fractured light across the green felt, each shard reflecting another $100,000 disappearing into the dealer's hands. Sarah Martinez stood frozen behind the velvet rope, watching her father's face crumble with each card that fell. Another marker, Mr. Martinez. The pit boss's voice carried the practiced sympathy of someone who had witnessed countless fortunes evaporate. Her father's hand shook as he signed another piece of paper. Another million? Another step toward the abyss that had been swallowing the Martinez family fortune for 6 months. Sarah was 23, fresh from business school, and watching her family's construction empire built over 3 generations dissolve in the gilded halls of the Bellagio. Her grandfather, Eduardo, had arrived in Las Vegas with nothing but calloused hands and a dream. Her father, Roberto, had turned that dream into a billion-dollar company that built half the hotels on the Strip. Now, those same hotels were witnesses to their downfall. The numbers didn't lie, and Sarah lived by numbers. The company was hemorrhaging money from a failed casino development in Macau. Creditors circled like vultures. Her father had brought the family to Vegas for what he called one last chance. A high-stakes poker tournament where the winner takes all prize could save everything. Instead, they were losing everything faster than she could calculate. Sarah Mia, go to the room, her father whispered without looking back. This is not for you to see. But Sarah had inherited more than her grandfather's business acumen. She had his stubbornness. She slipped away from the poker room, but not toward the elevators. Instead, she wandered the casino floor, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The slot machines sang their electronic lullabies, while tourists fed them coins with mechanical precision. At the blackjack tables, dealers moved with choreographed efficiency, their hands flowing like water over cards and chips. Sarah found herself studying the patterns, the mathematics of chance that governed this glittering temple to probability. She almost didn't notice the old man emptying trash cans near the low-limit tables. "Excuse me, miss." His voice was gentle, accented with something that reminded her of her grandfather's Spanish. "You look like someone carrying the weight of the world." Miguel Santos was 71 years old, had been cleaning the Bellagio's floors for 15 years, and possessed the kind of wisdom that only comes from watching human nature reveal itself under pressure. His uniform was immaculate, his silver hair neatly combed, and his eyes held a kindness that seemed out of place in a casino. "Just family problems," Sarah replied, surprised by her own honesty. "Ah, the poker room." Miguel nodded knowingly. "I've seen your father before. Good man, bad situation." Something in his tone made Sarah stop walking. "What do you mean?" Miguel glanced around, then gestured toward a quiet corner near the employee corridor. "Miss, I've been watching people play cards in this place for longer than you've been alive. Your father isn't a gambler. He's a businessman who thinks he can solve a business problem with luck. The company needs the money," Sarah said simply. "Money doesn't solve problems. Miss Strategy does. Your father is playing their game, by their rules, hoping for their mercy." Miguel's weathered hands folded over his cart handle. "But there are other games. Games most people don't even know they're playing. Sarah felt something shift inside her, a recognition she couldn't quite name. What kind of games? Miguel studied her face for a long moment. The kind your grandfather would have understood. Eduardo Martinez, right. Built most of this strip with his bare hands. Sarah's breath caught. You knew my grandfather. I knew of him. Before I cleaned floors, I dealt cards. Before I dealt cards, I built things too. Your grandfather and I, we came from the same world. We understood that the real game isn't about the cards you're dealt. It's about making sure you're playing the right game in the first place. That night, while her father continued his descent into mathematical impossibility at the poker tables, Sarah sat in the hotel room doing what she did best, analyzing numbers. But this time, she wasn't looking at construction contracts or profit margins. She was studying something Miguel had slipped into her hand as they parted ways. It wasn't a gambling system or a magic formula. It was something much more valuable, a perspective. The worn piece of paper contained notes written in Spanish and English. Mathematical formulas mixed with observations about human behavior. At the top, in careful handwriting, were the words, "The house always wins, because the house always thinks 3 moves ahead." Sarah spent the next morning walking through the casino with new eyes. She watched the dealers, the pit bosses, the surveillance cameras hidden in the ceiling domes. She observed the players who won consistently versus those who lost everything. She began to understand that her grandfather had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't a temple to chance. It was a perfectly designed business machine. And like any business machine, it had inefficiencies. "You're back," Miguel observed, as he cleaned ashtrays near the blackjack tables. "I need to ask you something," Sarah said. "What did you mean about other games?" Miguel's smile was sad and knowing. "Your father is trying to win enough money to save his company. But what if the real opportunity isn't winning money from the casino?" "I don't understand. This casino, like all casinos, has problems. Suppliers who overcharge, contractors who underdeliver, construction projects that run over budget." Miguel emptied another ashtray with practiced efficiency. "What if instead of trying to take their money, you help them save money?" The revelation hit Sarah like ice water. She wasn't thinking like her grandfather. Eduardo Martinez hadn't built an empire by gambling. He'd built it by solving problems others couldn't solve, by seeing opportunities others couldn't see. That afternoon, while her father sank deeper into debt at table 17, Sarah requested a meeting with the casino's operations manager. James Chen had worked his way up from dealer to floor supervisor to operations manager over 20 years. He was skeptical when a young woman in business attire asked to discuss cost optimization strategies for the casino's ongoing renovations. "Miss Martinez, I appreciate your initiative, but we have established relationships with our contractors. Mr. Chen, your established contractors are charging you 30% above market rate for materials and 40% above market rate for labor. I know because my family's company used to work with 3 of them." Sarah spread architectural plans across his desk, plans she'd somehow acquired through connections her grandfather had built decades earlier. She showed him line by line how the casino was being overcharged for everything from marble flooring to electrical work. "Your current renovation budget is $12 million. I can deliver the same work for $8.5 million, with better materials and a shorter timeline." "And why would you do this?" Chen asked. "What's your angle?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "My family owes this casino $2.7 million as of today. By tomorrow, it could be $3.5 million. I'm not asking for charity. I'm offering you a business solution that saves you money while solving my problem." Chen was quiet for a long moment. In his 20 years in casino management, he'd seen every kind of scheme, every kind of desperate play. But this wasn't desperation talking. This was business. "You're asking me to trust your family's company to complete a major renovation while your father is downstairs losing everything we'd pay you." "No, Mr. Chen. I'm asking you to trust me. The company will be mine by next week, one way or another. Either I save it, or the creditors liquidate it, and I start over with the pieces." There was something in her voice that reminded Chen of the old-school builders who had built Vegas in the first place. Men like Eduardo Martinez, who had shaken hands on million-dollar deals and never broken their word. "I'll need references." financial projections, a detailed timeline. You'll have them by tomorrow morning. Sarah worked through the night, calling in favors from suppliers her grandfather had helped decades earlier, reaching out to construction crews who remembered when the Martinez name meant something. By dawn, she had assembled a renovation proposal that would save the Bellagio over $3 million while generating enough profit to cover her family's debt. But she still had a problem. The proposal required materials and labor commitments that her company couldn't afford up front. She needed working capital, and her father was losing the last of their liquid assets at the poker tables. That's when Miguel appeared at her table in the hotel restaurant, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look like someone who's been up all night solving the world's problems," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "Close. Just my family's problems." Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. "Miguel, can I ask you something personal? You said you used to deal cards. What made you stop?" Miguel's expression grew distant. "I stopped because I realized I was helping other people destroy their lives, and I was destroying mine at the same time. I was good at cards, very good, but being good at something that hurts people, that's not the same as being successful. What if I told you I needed someone good at cards for something that would help people?" Miguel raised an eyebrow. "I would say that sounds like the beginning of either a very good story or a very bad mistake." Sarah slid the renovation proposal across the table. As Miguel read, his expression changed from curiosity to understanding to something that might have been admiration. "You want to save your family's business by building their competitors' renovation. I want to solve problems. For them, for us, for everyone involved." Sarah leaned forward. "But I need working capital. Enough to secure materials and put crews to work before the first progress payment comes in." "How much?" $2 million for 2 weeks. Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine appreciation for the audacity of it. "Miss, in my younger days, I once won $4 million at a poker table in Monaco. Lost it all back within a month because I didn't understand the difference between being lucky and being smart." He folded the proposal carefully. "What you're proposing isn't gambling, it's business. Real business. Miguel, I'm not asking you to, I'm not offering to loan you money, miss, I'm offering something better." Miguel reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "My nephew runs the largest commercial lending operation in Nevada. Private money, fast decisions, reasonable terms for good projects." The card read Santos Capital, commercial bridge lending, your nephew. "Family is more complicated than it appears, miss, just like everything else in this town." 2 hours later, Sarah sat in a gleaming office, 30 floors above the Strip, presenting her proposal to Carlos Santos, Miguel's nephew, who had built a $100 million lending business. By financing the dreams, Miguel had learned to spot cleaning casino floors. "This is solid work," Carlos said, after reviewing every page. "Professional, thorough, realistic margins. But I have to ask why not just take the insurance money and walk away? Your father's losses are covered under the company's key man policy." Sarah had considered that option. It would be easier, safer, more conventional. But it would also mean abandoning 3 generations of work, 3 generations of relationships, 3 generations of trust built one project at a time. Because walking away isn't who we are. My grandfather didn't walk away when they told him Mexicans couldn't build casinos. My father didn't walk away when bigger companies tried to push us out of Vegas. I'm not walking away now." Carlos smiled, the same knowing smile his uncle had shown her. "The loan is approved. $2 million, 14 days, 7% interest. But I have one condition, which is your father stops gambling. Today, right now, because if he loses another dollar, this whole thing becomes a very expensive mistake." Getting Roberto Martinez away from the poker table required the combined efforts of Sarah, 2 security guards, and a promise that his daughter had found a way to save the company. The conversation that followed, in the privacy of their hotel suite, was one of the most difficult of Sarah's life. "Mia, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. The creditors, the deadlines, the people depending on us. Papa, I understand better than you think. I've spent the last 2 days understanding." Sarah showed him the renovation contract, the lending agreement. the timeline that would get them back to profitability within 90 days. But this only works if you stop trying to solve business problems with gambling. Roberto Martinez had built his fortune by trusting his instincts about people and projects. Looking at his daughter, really looking at her, he realized he was seeing something he'd missed before. This wasn't the graduate student who had helped with paperwork and financial projections. This was a businesswoman who had inherited not just his father's vision, but his father's ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to come with me tomorrow morning. I need you to meet with the casino management and show them that when the Martinez family makes a commitment, we keep it. I need you to remember who we are." The next morning, Roberto Martinez walked into the Bellagio's conference room looking like the man who had built half of Las Vegas. The tremor was gone from his hands. The desperation was gone from his voice. In its place was the quiet confidence of someone who had solved impossible problems before and was prepared to do it again. James Chen had expected to meet with Sarah again. He hadn't expected to see the legendary Roberto Martinez looking like himself for the first time in months. "Mr. Chen, my daughter tells me you have a renovation project that needs the kind of attention only the Martinez family can provide." Over the next 4 hours, they walked through every detail of the renovation. Roberto's expertise in large-scale construction, combined with Sarah's financial analysis, created a presentation that was more than a business proposal. It was a partnership offer between equals. "We're not just offering to save you money," Sarah explained. "We're offering to deliver something better than what you originally planned, faster than you thought possible, with guarantees that protect your investment." The contract was signed that afternoon. Work began the next morning. What followed were 14 days that would become legend among the construction crews who worked Vegas. Roberto Martinez threw himself into the project with an intensity that reminded everyone why he had become successful in the first place. Sarah coordinated suppliers, managed timelines, and solved problems with a precision that amazed even veteran project managers. But the real transformation happened in the relationship between father and daughter. "You know, Mia, your grandfather would have been proud of what you did," Roberto said one evening as they reviewed progress reports in the hotel restaurant. "What I did was learn from what you taught me, and what he taught you. No, what you did was see something we both missed. We were so focused on the game we thought we were playing, we forgot there might be better games to play." Miguel appeared at their table, as he had taken to doing during their evening planning sessions. But tonight, he wasn't wearing his janitor's uniform. He was dressed in a well-tailored suit, and he was accompanied by James Chen. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Martinez, I'd like you to meet the other part of my family I haven't mentioned," Miguel said with a grin. "James is my son." The revelation hit both Martinez family members simultaneously. Sarah started laughing first, followed by her father, then Miguel and James. "You've been managing this entire situation from the beginning," Sarah said. "Not managing, miss, just ... making sure good people had the chance to make good decisions. Your family has a reputation in this town that goes back 50 years. When I saw your father heading toward destruction, I thought maybe someone needed to remind you what that reputation was worth." James added, "The casino industry is smaller than people think. We all know each other's stories. Your grandfather helped build this town when it was nothing but desert and dreams. We weren't about to let his legacy disappear without a fight." Roberto Martinez felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Gratitude without shame. Success without luck. Satisfaction earned through work rather than chance. The renovation was completed 2 days ahead of schedule and 15% under the revised budget. The quality exceeded every specification. More importantly, it reminded the Las Vegas construction community what the Martinez name had always meant: excellence, integrity, and the ability to deliver impossible results under impossible circumstances. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the evening Roberto Martinez walked back into the Bellagio casino. Not as a desperate gambler, but as a successful businessman celebrating a job well done. He stood at table 17, where he had lost nearly $3 million, and left a $100 tip for the dealer who had taken his money. "For your professionalism," he said simply, "and for helping teach my daughter that the real game isn't played at tables like this." 6 months later, Martinez Construction had returned to profitability. The Bellagio renovation had led to contracts with 3 other major casinos. Sarah had officially taken over as president, while Roberto remained as chairman of the board. Miguel Santos had retired from janitorial work and was now a consultant to his nephew's lending business, helping identify entrepreneurs who reminded him of a young Eduardo Martinez. On the anniversary of their lowest point, Sarah and Roberto returned to the Bellagio for dinner. As they sat in the restaurant where Sarah had first outlined her plan, Roberto raised his glass. "To your grandfather, who taught us to build, to you, Mia, who taught us to see, and to second chances that teach us who we really are." Sarah smiled, thinking about the year that had changed everything. "Papa, I've learned something about gambling and business and life. The biggest risk isn't betting everything you have. The biggest risk is forgetting that you have more than money to lose." Across the casino floor, at table 17, a new generation of dreamers and desperados tested their luck against the mathematical certainty of the house. Some would win, some would lose, but all would learn the same lesson the Martinez family had learned. Sometimes the game you think you're playing isn't the game that matters. Sometimes the most important victories happen when you stop gambling and start building. Sometimes the people who look like they have the least to offer have the most to teach. And sometimes, just sometimes, losing everything is exactly what you need to discover what you're really made of. The neon lights of the Strip continued their eternal dance against the desert sky. But for the Martinez family, the lights no longer represented temptation or false hope. They represented what they had always represented for Eduardo Martinez when he first arrived in Las Vegas with nothing but calloused hands and a dream. Opportunity, not for luck, but for work. Not for chance, but for choice. Not for gambling, but for building something that would last. In the end, Sarah Martinez had learned what her grandfather had always known. The house always wins because the house never gambles. It builds, it plans, it thinks 3 moves ahead. And in a town built on the dreams of people willing to risk everything for a chance at something better, sometimes the biggest winners are the ones who understand that the real game isn't about beating the house. It's about building something worthy of the name above the door. The Martinez family had played that game, and they had won. As they walked through the lobby of the hotel, their company had helped renovate, past the gaming tables where fortunes rose and fell with the turn of a card. Sarah Martinez carried with her the greatest prize of all, the knowledge that she had honored her family's legacy, not by gambling with it, but by building upon it. Trust, patience, and strategy had indeed turned despair into triumph. But more than that, they had turned a family of builders back into what they were always meant to be, architects of their own destiny, one carefully planned decision at a time. The girl who had lost everything had found something worth more than money. She had found herself, and in finding herself, she had saved them all. But success, as Eduardo Martinez had always taught his family, brings its own responsibilities. Within a year of the Bellagio renovation, Sarah found herself facing challenges she hadn't anticipated. Word of the Martinez comeback had spread throughout the construction industry, bringing opportunities that threatened to overwhelm their carefully rebuilt foundation. "We have 12 major casino projects requesting bids," Sarah told her father during one of their weekly strategy meetings. "Combined value of over $200 million. 6 months ago, we were bankrupt. Now, we have to decide which dreams we can afford to chase." Roberto smiled, recognizing the echo of conversations he'd had with his own father decades earlier. "Your grandfather used to say that saying no to good opportunities is harder than saying yes to great ones. What does your analysis tell you?" Sarah spread the project proposals across the conference table. Each represented months of work, millions in revenue, and the chance to rebuild relationships with major players throughout Nevada and California. But she had learned something during those desperate weeks at the Bellagio that changed how she evaluated every decision. "The numbers say we can handle maybe 4 of these projects without compromising quality. But Papa, I keep thinking about what Miguel taught me. The real game isn't just about winning the biggest contracts. It's about building something sustainable." The decision to focus on fewer better projects proved prescient when the economic climate shifted 6 months later. Several construction companies that had overextended themselves were forced to default on major contracts. Martinez Construction, operating at sustainable capacity, was able to absorb some of their most talented workers and complete abandoned projects with their signature attention to detail. Among these new team members was Elena Vasquez, a structural engineer who had worked for one of their former competitors. Elena brought something unique to the Martinez organization: experience with sustainable construction technologies that were just beginning to gain traction in the casino industry. Mr. Martinez, Miss Martinez, the Bellagio renovation was beautiful work, but it used traditional methods, Elena explained during her interview. What if I told you we could build the next generation of casino resorts using 50% less energy, with materials that last twice as long, at only 15% additional upfront cost? Sarah's business school training told her to be skeptical of claims that seemed too good to be true, but Elena's portfolio spoke for itself. 3 smaller projects in California that had exceeded every efficiency projection while winning architectural awards for their innovative design. The casino industry is about to face regulation requiring significant improvements in energy efficiency. Elena continued, the companies that get ahead of this curve will have a massive competitive advantage. The companies that wait will be forced to retrofit at enormous cost. Roberto and Sarah exchanged glances across the conference table. They had learned to trust their instincts about people, but they had also learned to verify everything with careful analysis. Elena, we'd like to offer you a position, Sarah said. But we'd also like to propose something unusual. Would you be willing to stake your reputation on a demonstration project? Something small enough that we can afford to experiment, but significant enough to prove your concepts. Elena's eyes lit up. What did you have in mind? The demonstration project came from an unexpected source. Miguel Santos, now a regular consultant to the family business, mentioned that his nephew, Carlos, was developing a boutique hotel near downtown Las Vegas. Nothing as grand as the Strip casinos, but significant enough to showcase new construction techniques to industry observers. 50 rooms, restaurant, small conference center, pool area, Carlos explained when they met to discuss the project. I want something that will make architects and developers throughout the Southwest take notice. Something that proves you can build better, not just bigger. Elena's design incorporated solar collection systems disguised as decorative elements, geothermal cooling that used the desert's natural temperature differentials, and construction materials made from recycled casino carpeting and gaming equipment. The aesthetic was stunning, modern without being cold, efficient without looking utilitarian, luxurious without being wasteful. But the real innovation was in the project management. Sarah implemented systems she had developed during the Bellagio renovation, coordinating suppliers and subcontractors with precision that minimized waste and maximized efficiency. Roberto brought his decades of relationship building experience, ensuring that every vendor understood they were part of something special. The Santos Boutique Hotel was completed in 8 months, 20% under budget, and immediately attracted attention from architectural magazines and industry publications throughout the region. More importantly, it attracted attention from casino executives who were beginning to understand that the future of Las Vegas might depend on buildings that used resources as carefully as they generated revenue. Sarah Mia, we're receiving calls from casino companies in Reno, Atlantic City, even Macau, Roberto told his daughter as they reviewed the hotel's opening week occupancy rates. They want to know if we can scale this approach to properties 10 times larger. Can we? Roberto's smile was thoughtful. That's the question your grandfather would have asked. Not whether we should, but whether we can do it well enough to be proud of the result. The answer came when MGM Resorts approached them about a revolutionary project. A completely carbon-neutral casino resort that would serve as a model for the entire gaming industry's environmental future. The project would require everything they had learned about innovation, efficiency, and managing complex stakeholder relationships. This isn't just a construction contract, explained Diana Walsh, MGM's Senior Vice President of Development. This is a chance to define what the casino industry looks like for the next 50 years. We need partners who understand that building something that lasts is more important than building something fast. The MGM project would take 3 years to complete and require coordination with environmental regulators, energy companies, technology vendors, and architectural firms from around the world. It would also require something Sarah had learned was more valuable than money: absolute trust between all parties involved. "Diana, we accept the project on one condition," Sarah said during the final contract negotiation. "We want complete transparency about every aspect of construction costs, environmental impact, and efficiency metrics. When this project is complete, we want other companies to be able to learn from what we built together. You're willing to share proprietary information with your competitors?" Roberto answered before Sarah could respond. "Miss Walsh, my father built his first casino in this town by sharing everything he learned with other Mexican contractors who were struggling to get established. He always said that lifting others up doesn't make you weaker. It makes the entire industry stronger." The MGM project became a showcase not just for Martinez Construction, but for an entire network of suppliers, subcontractors, and specialty firms that had learned to work together with unprecedented cooperation. Elena's environmental innovations were matched by contributions from companies throughout the Southwest, each bringing their best ideas to a project that would be studied by architects and engineers for decades. But the real testament to the Martinez family's transformation came during the project's most challenging phase. 18 months into construction, a supply chain disruption threatened to delay completion by 6 months and add $15 million to the budget. "We have 3 options," Sarah explained to the project team during an emergency meeting. "We can use substitute materials and compromise the environmental standards. We can accept the delays and cost overruns. Or we can find a completely different approach." "What kind of different approach?" Elena asked. Sarah looked around the conference room at faces that had become familiar over months of shared challenges. Miguel Santos, now officially the project's community relations coordinator; Elena Busquis, whose innovations had attracted national attention; James Chen from the Bellagio, who had become an informal advisor to the project; Carlos Santos, whose boutique hotel had provided the proof of concept for everything they were attempting on a massive scale. "What if we treat this crisis the same way we treated our family crisis 3 years ago? What if we stop thinking about this as a construction problem and start thinking about it as a community problem?" The solution they developed became a model for crisis management throughout the construction industry. Instead of simply finding new suppliers, Martinez Construction worked with local manufacturers to temporarily retool their facilities to produce the specialized materials the project required. Instead of accepting delays, they reorganized the construction sequence to continue work in areas unaffected by the supply shortage. Most importantly, they maintained complete transparency with MGM about both the challenges and the solutions, turning potential conflict into deeper partnership. "Sarah, in 30 years of construction management, I've never seen a contractor handle a crisis like this," Diana Walsh told her during the project's final inspection. "Most companies would have demanded change orders, blamed external factors, and protected their margins. You turned a problem into an opportunity to demonstrate why character matters more than contracts." The MGM Resort opened 6 months ahead of the revised schedule, achieved carbon neutrality within its first year of operation, and became the template for sustainable casino development throughout the world. But for the Martinez family, the project's success was measured in something more meaningful than industry recognition or financial returns. Roberto Martinez walked through the completed resort on opening night, accompanied by his daughter and granddaughter Sarah's 10-year-old daughter, Isabella, who had spent summers learning construction basics from the same grandfather who had taught Roberto decades earlier. "Abuelo Roberto, will I learn to build casinos like you and Mama?" Isabella asked as they stood in the resort's main lobby, surrounded by the gentle hum of energy-efficient systems and the soft glow of LED lighting that would operate for decades without replacement. "Mia, you'll learn to build whatever the world needs," Roberto replied. "Your great-great-grandfather built with his hands because that's what the world needed then. Your mother built with her mind because that's what the world needed when she grew up. You'll build with whatever gifts God gives you and whatever tools your generation creates." Sarah watched her father talking to his granddaughter and realized that the story that had begun with devastating loss at a casino table had become something much larger than a family comeback. It had become a template for how businesses, families, and communities could transform crisis into opportunity through trust, patience, and the willingness to see problems as invitations to build better solutions. As the evening wound down and the casino's guests began to explore the resort's restaurants, gaming areas, and entertainment venues, Sarah found Miguel Santos standing on a balcony overlooking the Las Vegas Strip. The lights of a dozen casinos stretched toward the mountains, each representing dreams built from sand and imagination. "Miguel, I never properly thanked you for what you did for us," she said, joining him at the railing. Miguel's smile was gentle and knowing. "Miss, you thanked me every day by proving that good people can make good choices even in the hardest circumstances. Your family didn't need saving, you just needed reminding of who you already were, and who were we? Builders. People who see solutions where others see problems. People who understand that the real game isn't about beating anyone else. It's about building something worthy of the name you carry." Sarah looked out across the lights of Las Vegas, thinking about her grandfather Eduardo, who had arrived in this desert with nothing but determination and the willingness to work harder than anyone else. She thought about her father, Roberto, who had almost lost everything but had learned that failure could teach lessons more valuable than easy success. She thought about her daughter, Isabella, who would grow up knowing that family legacy isn't just about money or property, it's about character proven under pressure. But mostly, she thought about the lesson that had changed everything. Sometimes the most important games are the ones you don't realize you're playing until you understand the real stakes involved. The Martinez family had thought they were playing a game about money, about saving a construction company, about avoiding bankruptcy. They had discovered they were actually playing a game about identity, about values, about what it means to build something that lasts longer than a single generation. They had won that game, not by gambling everything on a single bet, but by making careful decisions, one at a time, that honored both their past and their future. As the lights of the Strip flickered against the desert stars, Sarah Martinez smiled, knowing that the real victory wasn't measured in dollars or contracts or industry awards. It was measured in the knowledge that when her granddaughter looked back on this moment, decades from now, she would remember a family that had faced its darkest hour and chosen to build rather than bet, to trust rather than gamble, to see opportunity where others saw only loss. The girl who had turned $1 billion loss into her family's greatest comeback had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, losing everything is just the beginning of discovering what you're really capable of building. And in a city built on the dreams of people willing to risk everything for a chance at something better, that might be the most valuable jackpot of all. If this story inspired you to think differently about taking risks, building legacies, and finding opportunity in the darkest moments, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your own comeback story in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when we stop gambling with our dreams and start building them, one careful decision at a time.